I might share a poem or something, but I'm just gonna have to play it by ear.
All right, that's totally fine. If
Um,
you just want to sit back and be
um,
entertained. But we are live now, which means I can do my official introduction. Are you ready? So, good evening, everybody that are here and is online, is watching on Facebook or on YouTube or wherever you're watching, and welcome to Tales and Tunes. So, Tales and Tunes is our spoken word and music open mic. We do seem to have mostly spoken word tonight, and normally I would do a bit of music, but literally my voice is. Um, so we might just have to we might have to do some a cappella singing if anyone's up for that. Um, what do I need to tell you? I don't think anything I need to tell you. We always start though with a little bit of extreme storytelling from me. So I'm going to create a story on the spot for your delight and delectation. I say I'm going to create it. I'm just holding the reins. You guys are kind of putting the ideas in. So what will happen is we will decide three things: who the story is about, what they want, and who might get in the way. And then we'll start telling. And when I need an idea, I will ask you, and you can shout it out, write it in the chat, and I will try and keep an eye on the Facebook live stream. So if anyone is watching on Facebook and wants to chuck an idea in, then they can. Let me just make sure I've got that up. Hold on 1 second. Otherwise, I'll make that promise, and then it won't actually be possible. Da, da, da. Hang on a second. Are we live? My Facebook doesn't like me today. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, I can't find it on Facebook, so it's just going to be people in the room if I manage to get the Facebook running up. And then before then you can message me on there with your ideas. Hold on, just see if I can get on this one. Oh dear. But I can feel my nose running already. See, this is why it's good that we can do these things virtually. Yay! Okay, I found it online. So if you want to chuck in suggestions online, I can now see that. All right, so let us decide. Who would you like this story to be about? Who would you like to be the hero, the protagonist of our story this evening?
A bus driver.
A bus driver. Nice. Any advance on bus driver? Oh, we
Little
have.
Bo Peep.
Or Little Bo Peep. Wow, good contrast. Also driving in some ways, just sheep instead of buses. All right, votes for bus driver? Uh, Oh, I think bus driver takes it. Unlucky, Baden. We'll save little Bo Peep for next time. All right. So this is the story of a bus driver. And what does our bus driver want more than anything in the world? What is his heart's desire for this story? What do you think, Norman?
He wants Bo Peep to ride his bus.
We're gonna keep that story. Are we happy with that? There we go. Okay, he wants little Bo Peep to ride his bus. Okay, we will find out why. Why does she not want to ride his bus? Who knows? The story will tell us. And we need to decide just finally before we start this story, who or what is going to try and stop our bus driver having his dream of little Bo Peep riding his bus? Who's going to be our bad guy, our villain, our antagonist? I think that's what they're called. Who's going to get in the way?
The wolf.
The
Ah,
wolf!
the big
Yay!
bus.
Okay.
The big bad wolf. Okay. We're going for some nice traditional fairy tale characters. Love it. All right, here we go. Once upon a time, there was a bus driver. I feel our bus driver needs a name. Who would like to name him? Give him a name. Oh, I've turned the chat off, so I can't see what he's writing. There we go. What are we going to call our bus driver, guys? Let's give him a name. Where that's going.
Percy.
Percy, the bus driver. Very good. Okay. So, once upon a time, there was a bus driver, and his name was Percy. And he drove his bus around the streets of London because that's what I picture when I see a bus, one of those lovely double deckers. It was a 77 bus, which is a bus that I used to get for into Clapham Junction to run my theatre company many, many years ago. And Percy was like a really good bus driver. He knew all the routes, he could get everyone everywhere on time. He was like the best bus driver. But he got really fed up with every day. There'd just be commuters, people going from the edge of London into the middle of London. And he thought, wouldn't it be great if there could be something magical happen on my bus? Wouldn't it be amazing if there could be an actual nursery rhyme character on my bus that would cheer up all of my passengers? And when he was a kid, his favourite nursery rhyme was Little Bo Peep. Little Bo Peep having lost her sheep and didn't know where to find them. And leave them alone and they'll come home, carrying their tails behind them. He, like me, could not quite remember the rhyme, but he thought, you know what? When I'm not on my, when I've completed when I've completed my bus driving duties for the day, I'm going to see if I can find little Bo Peep and see if she'll come and her sheep will be on the bus and it'll make my passengers so happy instead of just having to go from their boring jobs in London suburbs to their boring jobs in the London city. So, if you were Percy the bus driver and you'd finished your evening shift and you wanted to take your bus out to find little Bo Peep, where would you look first? Where shall we search for Miss Bo Peep? What do you think?
Is there a place, let's say in London or wherever, where pasture is in the name, or?
Oh, maybe Richmond Park. Like that's like a really big kind of like, shall we go there? But for those of you that know London, it's like parks that I know. So, and also because the 77 bus goes there, we're just doing a bit autobiography for me here. So we decided to drive his bus all the way out to Richmond Park. And Richmond Park is this huge, expensive land. It has a ballet school in the middle of it. It has deer like running each other. If you've ever seen like the video of like someone calling the dog that's chasing deer, that's Richmond Park. So we went to Richmond Park and he went through, and the first place he went to was the Royal Ballet School because it's a big building in the middle of it. And he went up to the Royal Ballet School and he thought, well, they do kind of fairy tale things. They do the Nutcracker, that kind of thing. Maybe they will know where I can find little Bo Peep. So he knocked on the door of the Royal Ballet School like this. You can find something to knock on. And the door opened with a creak, and there was the director of the Royal Ballet School. And she said, yes, what can I do for you, Percy the bus driver? And he said, how did you know my name? She said, that doesn't matter. What can I do for you? He said, well, I think my passengers look a bit sad every day commuting into work. And I thought maybe something that used to make me happy would make them happy. Maybe if I could bring little Bo Peep. And the only place I knew to look for little Bo Peep was the biggest expanse of green that I knew that was on my route. Have you by any chance seen little Bo Peep? And the director of the Royal Ballet School said, well, it just so happens that I have. I mean, she didn't have any sheep with her. She was trying to marshal the deer because, the two kind of different crowds of deer, they just keep rutting and like annoying each other. But I was watching her and she was trying to manage the deer. And then suddenly I heard in the distance a big, oh, in fact, you can join me in that if you like, ready, wherever you are. 1, 2, 3. Oh. And then suddenly I saw little Bo Peep running and then I lost track of her. And Percy said, oh, thank you so much for your help. Can you point me in the general direction? She said, I can't remember where I was looking, but if you find one of the deer, you can ask them. So Percy, the bus driver, obviously he'd parked, he wasn't driving his bus through Richmond Park, I should say. That's definitely not allowed. He'd parked his bus up at the edge, just where the Asda is on that big road. And told you, autobiographical. And he'd walked through the park and he saw the little deer. Now, there were two kinds of deer in there, and I do not remember what they are. He went up to the leader of the little deer, had like the big antlers. And he said, little deer, can you tell me where I can find little Bo Peep? And what do you think that little deer told him? What shall we say that this little deer said? Oh, Sarah's shaking her head. Little deer said, whoa, no. I am the leader of the little deer, and I am sworn to silence as to where little Bo Peep is. All we know is that we heard a huge howl and she was running and she was gone. Well, Percy the bus driver said, but I need her. I need her to come on the bus and bring my sheep, or deer would do, just to like cheer up my commuters. And so the little deer gave him a clue. What was the clue that the little deer gave him as to where he should look, even for little Bo Peep? Lost my gender and my characters. Go, Evita. Yeah.
In the mushroom forest.
The mushroom forest. Beautiful. So Percy said, where shall I find the mushroom forest? And the deer said, it has the best mushrooms, the best fungi. I often take my whole herd there. It's a very little known part of Richmond Park, but you see the trees over in the distance. Inside that, you'll find like a little kind of clearing. And in there, you'll see like a fairy ring of mushrooms. And Percy thanked the deer and he headed off across the fields until he came, sure enough, to this bank of trees. And he walked in, and sure enough, in the middle, there was this clearing. And there was a fairy ring of mushrooms in the middle of it. I thought, well, I'm here now. I don't know what to do. I can't see little Bo Peep anywhere. So he stood. He was very careful not to stand in the middle of the fairy ring because who knows what might have happened. He stood the outside of the fairy ring just to be careful. And he called for little Bo Peep. Can you call with me, everybody? He said, little Bo Peep! See, I can't hear you. Roshin's doing. Thank you. Little Bo Peep, where are you? But no little Bo Peep came, but what he heard instead was another. Are you ready? Oh! And into the middle of the... Nice. Give it to us again, Baden. And into the middle of that fairy ring swept the big bad wolf. And he said, Percy, the bus driver, I have been expecting you. I knew about your dreams from when you were a child. And Percy, the bus driver, said, well, that's very nice, big bad wolf, but actually, I've come here to see little Bo Peep, not you. Big bad wolf said, you cannot see little Bo Peep. Only I can see little Bo Peep. For I have stolen her sheep and I'm going to round them up and eat them later. Percy said, you can't do that. I need those little lambs so that they cheer up my commuters. There's nothing makes anyone happier than holding a little lamb. I've got like milk bottles and everything ready for them. Big Bad Wolf says, no, I shall not tell you where she and her sheep. So, if you're Percy the bus driver and you're faced with a big bad wolf in the middle of the fairy ring, you need to find a way to convince the big bad wolf or get rid of the big bad wolf. What shall we attempt first? You know this is a rule of 3, so the first 2 won't work, but let's give them a go anyway. It might change.
Lick his nose.
Say again.
Lick his nose.
Ah. So Percy the bus driver had heard kind of lots of things about, like, if you've got a predator, something to do with their nose. Like, like when you have a shark, like some sharks you're supposed to punch. Anyway, he thought, maybe if I lick the wolf's nose, because it's like that, they'll have a wet nose. Maybe I'll make him happy and then maybe he'll give me Bo Peep. So he tiptoed closer towards the big bad wolf and he stuck his tongue out this. He was just about to lick the big bad wolf's nose, and you know what the big bad wolf did, don't you? He went, oh, and snapped at Percy, and Percy jumped back from the fairy ring and went, oh no, I'm sorry, big bad wolf. I just thought it might make you happy, and you might let me know where little Bo Peep is. So, lovelies and gentle humans, what shall we try next? The licking the nose didn't work. Let's have another plan.
Scratching the ears.
He thought, I know. When I have my dog at home, what pleases him completely is like, he just likes being scratched between the ears. Percy thought, all right, I'll do this. And he went, good boy, good boy. And he stepped into the fairy ring again. And he was just about to put his hand to his scratching between the ears. And you know what the big bad wolf did, don't you? He went, oh, and he snapped at Percy's hand. And Percy jumped back and went, I'm so sorry, big bad wolf. I just thought you might like it. Now this time it was getting dark. And Percy knew he had just one last attempt to try to find little Bo Peep so he could bring her back onto the bus and entertain all of the computers and make them happy. So we need one unfoilable plan to convince the big bad wolf to give up little Bo Peep and her sheep. What shall we do? What will be our last attempt? What do you think?
Feed him a
Evita?
mushroom.
There you
Feed
go.
him a mushroom.
So, as the wolf was standing his ground, Percy said, I'll just leave you to think about that for a while. And Percy carefully stepped around the ring of mushrooms. And unbeknownst to the wolf, when he was behind the wolf, he picked up a mushroom, and then another one, and then another one, until he had a whole handful. And he said, oh, wolf, it's getting late, and we're probably going to be here for the night, me trying to, deal with you and you trying to deal with me. Maybe we could just have some of these mushrooms. And the wolf realized that he hadn't eaten for a long time. He'd been planning to eat those lambs, but now he was trying to stop Percy from getting to the lambs. And he looked at the mushrooms, and when he sniffed them, all the spores of the mushrooms went into his nose, and he could not resist. And he ate one mushroom, and then another mushroom. And the mushrooms were so tasty and so wonderful that when he'd eaten them all, he went, oh! And it wasn't long till those beautiful mushrooms sent the big bad wolf fast asleep. And as soon as he was asleep, well, who should appear in that fairy ring but little Bo Peep? And she appeared in front of Percy and said, Percy, thank you so much. You've rescued me. The wolf was keeping me invisible and all of my sheep. How could I ever repay you? Percy said, well, it's funny you should say that. I've got a bus just waiting on the big road by the Asda, and I wondered if maybe you could come with me tomorrow morning and bring all your lambs and maybe the odd cute deer. And then all my commuters, when I pick them up, will be so happy by the time they go to work. So that's exactly what happened. Little Bo Peep said, of course, and she took all of her sheep and they went across Richmond Park. went out of the mushroom forest. They waved at the Royal Ballet School and said, thank you very much. And they got on the 77 bus and they had a lovely meal together that night. And the next morning they got up super early, 5 o'clock in the morning. And little Bo Peep made sure that on every single seat, there was a lamb or a baby deer to cuddle. So when every single commuter got on, they picked up their cuddly animal. And do you know what? They were so happy they didn't even bother going to work that day. They just spent the entire day stroking animals. And I can assure you, they all lived happily ever after. The end. Oh, that was fun. Anything that ends with people going, to stroke baby animals instead of capitalism. Thank you so much for all your input. I love that so much. Okay, I'm going to hand over to who was first in. Sarah, I have you down as being first in. You're the first person I saw on my screen. You don't have to go first if someone else wants to, but
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
are you
Yeah.
happy to? Yeah?
Yeah.
All
I'm
right.
fine. I'm fine.
I'm-
I'm fine.
I'm going to spotlight you, but if you want to unspotlight yourself, you can if you don't like to see yourself big. There we go. All right, everybody, give it up for Sarah.
Right. Oh goodness. I wasn't really ready. I was away with the Bo Peeps actually.
You can just tell Bo Peep, you know, I think we're all here for it now.
So, all right. This is a little story from Somerset because we were talking about days to do with counties in England. That's it. And we worked out, I looked it up and found that Somerset Day is the 11th of May, which is the day that we remember because of King Alfred, ancient British king. Anyway, we're going to have a story about an even earlier British king, but it's in Somerset. It's a Somerset story. King Arthur, famous king, was having a little holiday. Well, all kings have to have holidays. And King Arthur definitely needed a holiday from all the warring, all the antagonism. Even though he had a round table, people still argued. So he had walked from Cornwall along the coast on his beautiful horse. And now he got to the fine land that is near Dunster Castle. And he took his horse and he walked to the beach. And there in the bay was a giant thing. It was rolling and twisting and turning and spraying water into the sky. What is that? Is it some strange sea creature? And he was so intrigued he couldn't go away. He kept looking and he kept looking, and then he realised it had a long, 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 long nose. It had ears, but also spikes, and down the back of its neck were spines. And it had big wings as well as big arms and legs. There in the bay was a dragon. A happy dragon, though it looked, twisting and turning and rolling in the water. Wow, it was amazing. And King Arthur looked for a while, and then he walked, as one always does at the seaside, up and down the edge of the water. And there, just by the edge of the water, was a big piece of stone carved with the most amazing swirls and twirls. It was beautiful. And he heaved and he pulled this big piece of stone until it was on the sand. Oh, I like that, he said, and I think I might take that home with me. And so he pulled it up the beach until he hid it under some rocks. And then he thought he ought to do his duty, because every king must greet the local king, and everyone from Somerset knows that there is a castle on top of the hill in Dunster. So off went the king to greet the other king. And he left his horse with the stable boy and walked up to the great hall. Now, usually, when King Arthur went to a visiting king, there was a great hullabaloo and everybody greeting him, and, you know, He was King Arthur, for goodness sake. But nothing. And he realised there was a great argument going on in the hall. There was shouting and threatening noises. And when he got in, he saw there were hordes of people shouting at the local king of Dunster. You have to do something. We cannot cope anymore. It's taking our sheep. It'll be people next. People next? King Arthur was a bit confused, but he forced his way to the front of the crowd to hear what was going on. And he realised they were talking about that dragon he'd seen, rolling and twisting and turning in the sea, looking so happy and glorious. And he realised that all eyes were turning on him. Aha, said the King of Dunster. Welcome, friend, welcome. You are gladly welcome at this time. And his eyes, oh, they were shining. At last, he thought, someone has come to do the job that I didn't want to do. Dragon killing is a bit dangerous. And here is a knight, a king, and doesn't he look glorious? He is exactly the right person for the job. My lord, said King Arthur, I am so glad to be welcomed. I am King Arthur from Cornwall, and I have come to lay at your feet in your land and greet you as every visiting king should. Oh yes, said the King of Dunster. Yes, that's lovely, lovely, thank you. Oh yes, but I have something even more important. You see what is going on in this room? Everybody is worried about a dragon. We have this giant dragon and he has been rampaging round, and we have no knights anymore who could avenge us and kill the dragon, because that's what must happen. The dragon must be killed. And Arthur suddenly realised what was going on, and he wasn't keen on killing dragons, and especially not the risk of killing dragons, but a king must do what a king must do, and he got the short straw. Of course, he said in his most magnanimous voice, I will go at once and seek the dragon. And he turned on his shiny heel, throwing his shiny cloak over his shoulder. I didn't tell you he had a shiny heel and a shiny cloak, but of course he's King Arthur, so of course he did. And he went back and collected his horse and wandered towards the beach again, where he'd last seen the dragon, out in the water, twisting and turning, totally happy, wondering what on earth he was going to do. Well, when he got to the beach, he sat down and had a good long think. And as he was thinking, a woman walked up. She was tall and elegant, but she wasn't the beautiful princess you might be expected. No, she was modestly dressed, almost like a nun, covered on the head, but slightly wet on the feet and the legs. And she wandered up and she was looking all around, and she saw the king, but she didn't see him as a king. Here was a man sitting on the beach looking sad and thoughtful. Sir, she said, I'm looking for something. Oh, said the king. Yes, what are you looking for? Ah, said the woman, I am looking for my altar. I have come from Wales. I have come seeking a land of peace and quiet, where I may worship quietly and heal the sick. Yes, said the king, and I brought on my small boat an altar, and on it were swirls and turquoise carved into it. But there was a storm at sea, and my boat turned over, and I lost the altar. And I need this altar before I can set up my place of healing and calm. said the king. He suddenly remembered that large piece of stone he'd hidden up the beach. And I have a problem, said the king. You see, out in the bay, there is a dragon. And the king, the local king, he wants me to kill the dragon. And I don't know what to do. Oh, you can't kill the dragon, said the woman. No, that would be most unfair. No, I don't agree with things like that. But it might eat people, said King Arthur. Oh, no, don't worry about that, said the woman. And the king was getting a bit surprised. No, she said, it's quite all right. Really, he said. Oh, yes, you see, when the storm came up in the night, I wrapped my scarf around me because my scarf will protect whatever it is wrapped around. Now, I had wrapped it around the altar, but when the storm came up and I thought I would be lost, I weighed it up. Was the altar more important than me? And I thought that I would be saved better, and then I could find the altar later. Now I have my scarf, and we could wrap it round the dragon. And once it is wrapped round the dragon, I will be able to calm the dragon and do anything that is needed. We don't need to kill the dragon. Ah, said the king. Well, if you do that, I might be able to find your altar for you. And so a deal was struck between the strange maiden and the king. And the king, he found her the altar. And the maiden, she entrapped the dragon. And it is said that she took the dragon to her land of calm, to the valley next to Dunster Castle. And there she created a place of peace and quiet, where those who needed to be healed could be healed. And the dragon lived for many years, but was buried eventually underneath the land. And some people say it's still there. And the dragon gives out those peaceful thoughts. But you can still go to Dunster, and you can walk up the hill to the castle at the top and remember the story of the king who was so anxious about his dragon that he ignored the fact that the magical King Arthur had come for a visit. And that's my very silly, strange story of Arthur visiting Dunster. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. There was a lovely moment. You have to watch me out when she first put her scarf around her. It was like a fairy on your screen. There was a little dot that like followed you. It was really beautiful.
Oh.
Did you see that, Avita? Avita's not. It's like there's a fairy.
Yes. I wasn't sure how long I'd been. I think we need a warning sign.
Ah, you're fine. Lovely
Quick
stuff.
question for
Thank you
Sarah.
so much. Go on then,
Quick question
question
for
away,
Sarah.
Baden.
Baba C is not here tonight, so somebody's got to do the terrible jokes. You know, King Arthur,
Yeah.
is that where the English get the expression Arthur Crown?
Oh my goodness. I'm so bringing my dum-dum sound effect. David, you had your hand up, my dear. Was that something to share?
Well, I could tell if you want me to, or I was
I
just
actually
going, oh, Shaw, when Arthur, half an Arthur Crown, things
there
like
you
that.
go. I actually have you down next on my list. You were the
Oh,
next person
okay.
to appear on my screen.
Uh-oh,
So
uh-oh.
and you promised you said you had a story ready, so I'm really
Oh,
excited
yeah, I
about
have a
it.
story ready.
All
Just briefly, what I've been doing lately is I've been delving into the Mesoamerican legends and tales, and
I'm going to spotlight you and talk.
it's very, very interesting. It's very, very interesting. And I've also am beginning to learn two languages, Nahuatl and the Quechua. So we got things going here, stuff like that. So the story I'm going to tell is from the Inca, from the Andes area and things like that. And the word for the Andes in Quechua is Anti. And Tawantasuyu is the empire of the four regions. And this story comes from the Antisuyu, the eastern region. This is the condor and the shepherdess. Oh, my friends, my friends, my friends. High, high, high up in the Andes, in the Andes, Kuntur, lord of the condors, was surveying his land. And he took off. And with one flap of his wings, he could soar. He could soar and he could move and he could soar. And then another flap of the wings. And he would go for long, long times, surveying his kingdom, surveying his land. But, oh, my friends, he was also looking for a wife, a mate, for he was quite lonely. Kuntur has his name, which means condor in Quechua. He kept flying and looking, and there on the side of one of the mountains, long down, long down, long down, he saw a beautiful maiden with the long black obsidian hair, the statuesque body, by herself, watching her sheep. She was by herself. There was no one with her, for it is said amongst the people that she came from that she preferred her own company, so she could sing to her sheep. She could sing to herself, and she could spin and weave whenever she wished. So Kuntur, lord of the condors, came slowly, slowly circling down, 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 and he landed behind her so she could not see him, transformed himself into a beautiful man who walked over and greeted her and said, "You are so lovely. You are so wonderful to be by yourself, to be strong and safe enough that you feel that you can do this by yourself. I myself have seen you many times, and I myself have fallen in love with you and wonder if you would be my bride." Well, the maiden, the shepherdess, looked at him. Yes, he was quite handsome. Yes, he was tall. Yes, he had obsidian eyes. And yes, he had that regal look about his face. And she said, I decided to be by myself. I am not going to be married. I have too many other things to do. And so Kuntur nodded and said, well, before I leave, I have an itch in the very back of my back and I can't reach it. Would you be so kind as to scratch it for me? She said, well, certainly. You have been so kind. I will do this for you. So he turned around, and as soon as she reached up to scratch that part where he could not reach, he turned back into Kuntur, the lord of the condors, and she was stuck to him. And up, up, with one flap of his wings, up, up, up he went, higher into Antisuyu, the eastern region of the Andes. Up, higher, 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 and he came into his rest. And there was a cave where he lived, and it was cold. Oh, it was so cold up high in the and the Antisuyu. And she was shivering, and she says, I need fire. Fire? Why do you wish fire? I am a human, and I need to be warm. So Kuntur brought some sticks to her, and she found some rocks, and one was flint, and she struck it, and then a fire, and he stood back. She says, no, don't be afraid. I will not hurt you. Just be aware. I need to be warm. And so it was that days went by, and she was there, and she told Kuntur, she says, I am so hungry, and I am so thirsty. I need food. And he said, I will get it. So one flap of his wings, and he soared, and he soared, and he soared, and he came upon a dead animal. And he picked it up and brought it up to her and says, here's food. She said, I can't eat this. It's not cooked. It's rotten. he said, well, you have fire, and I hear that humans cook their food. I do not eat cooked food, but here you may eat. And so she did what she could. And she says, I'm thirsty also. And he said, well, let me see what I can do. So one flap of his wings, and up he soared, and he soared, and he came around, and he found a bucket. And in that bucket was water. And, well, the water was dirty, but it was water. So he picked it up with his claws, and up he went. Up, and he set it down in front of her. And she looked at it, and, well, she wasn't certain how she could do this, but she remembered that if she could filter it through sand and rocks, it would clean. So she took her knowledge of this, and she made a sieve, and she poured the dirty water through it, and it came out clean, and she was able to drink. And she was able to cook the food that, even though it was dead, she could deal with it. This went on for days and weeks and months, and she began to change. The hair on her head started falling out. Her neck became elongated, and her arms began to grow wings, feathers. She even laid eggs. And she was like, what? Ah, but during this time, her mother kept looking for her. Where is my daughter? Here are the sheep, but where is my daughter? She did not know what to do, so she prayed to the great Viracocha, the sky, the god. And she says, I need help. And Viracocha heard and sent the giant parrot down to her. And the giant parrot said, I know where your daughter is, and I will go get her for you. Up it flew, its large wings flapping more than the condor, flapping up, and he circled around, and he found the daughter, and it looked like her daughter, but she has feathers, but there's a human face, and the great parrot went down and grabbed her and took her off, and the condor came and saw what was going, and he went after the parrot. Faster, and the parrot faster and faster, and went down and was able to drop the woman by her mother, and up it went, and the condor, and his eyes burning red with rage, took and ate the parrot, but it passed through and came out. Many more parrots came from that giant parrot, and they went out all over to tell the story. And the mother saw what she saw was her daughter, but she was different. She was bald and long neck, and she had feathers on her arms, and she did not know what to do. But the wise man of the village came and said, I can help you. So we began drumming and singing in words that I cannot pronounce, drumming and singing and burning incenses and praying to the gods. And slowly, the shepherdess became a human once again. And to this day, my friends, when you see the great condor, one flap of the wings, flying around the Andes, soaring, circling, you know that he is looking for the woman who had been his wife.
Oh, thank you. That was awesome. I love that. It has real echoes of like an Irish story that I tell where she kind of turns from like a wolf thing back into a woman again. It's like,
Mhm.
I always find it really fascinating when you find these different kind of themes. Love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I am just going to put, because I keep forgetting to do it, I'm going to put in the chat the message that's got my PayPal link in case anyone is feeling generous. But absolutely no obligation. I just need to do the thing. Okay, the next person to appear on my screen was Norman. Norman, do you have a tale to share? And are you ready, my dear?
Yes, I do.
Cool.
And it's a tale for this time of year too. So
Lovely. I should give you a heads up. The order I've got everyone else in after that is Keith, Baden, Evita, and Roshan. So like just so I'm not springing it on you. All right, Norman, let me spotlight you, my dear. There we go. Go
Mm.
for
I first heard this story from Michael I'm sorry, Bruchak, Joseph Bruchak. And he's a Abenaki storyteller, also Scandinavian, and the third one there, just to keep his hand in as being a citizen of the world.
Mm.
And this story is called When the Chenoo Howls. Now, it doesn't say how anyone really knew about the Chenoo, but there was stories of the Chenoo. It was a fearsome creature covered in shaggy fur. It was hungry to the point of madness all the time, and nobody ever met the Chenoo and got away. The Chenoo would start running. The person would scream. They would run, and the Chenoo would eat them. So this had been the way of things for many, many, many years. But and there was a part of the forest though that nobody ever went to because that is where the Chenoo lived. And so the Chenoo was particularly hungrier than ever at this time. But it was a place where there's lots of game because of the Chenoo. And so one family, a sister and her two brothers, ventured into the forbidden part of the forest. And there was much good game. There was berries, wild nuts, hazelnuts, all kinds of things. And so the young woman would fill the baskets during the day. And when the two brothers came back with the hunting, the young girl would skin the animal, a deer or whatever, and that kept her busy. There's lots and lots of work to be done, for the winter was coming, and it was always cold, long, cold, hard winter. So she worked quickly one day until one day, though, along with the sounds of the forest, the birds, and other creatures, she heard a sound that the stories only told of, but she recognized it. It was the howling of the Chenoo. And it was a hungry howl going through the forest and getting closer and closer and closer. And one thing that the young girl knew, that nobody ever survived an encounter with the Chenoo, for the story said they would run and be devoured by the hungry creature. And two brothers were far away. In a way, she was glad that they were out hunting, because they would catch, the Chenoo would catch them as well. So she sat by the where she was preparing the hides, and the Chenoo came howling across the clearing, closer and closer, its long fur waving in the breeze, howling like the winds of winter. And she watched the Chenoo come closer and closer and closer, but she just sat there. She sat there and waited patiently. And the Chenoo came up to her, and instead of screaming or running away, he found a young woman just sitting there on a pelt, just sitting there. So it stopped. And she said, "Oh, grandfather, welcome, welcome. Come sit. You must be very hungry. There's food for you." Now, nobody had ever called him grandfather. Somehow, though, a dim, tiny little memory of when times were different, when it lived among people. And so it sat down. And she said, "Grandfather, you must be hungry. We have prepared meat for you." And she handed the meat that was drying on the racks that she had prepared with much labor. And the Chenoo devoured it. And then she went and got more of the dried meat, and it devoured that too. More and more the Chenoo cried, more. And so, bit by bit, she brought over all the food that they had prepared until they came to the raw meat that had not yet been prepared. But that too she put in front of the Chenoo, and it grabbed hold of it, and it ripped the meat apart, blood spraying every which way, and it ate more and more and more, until at last it came, there's no food left. And at that moment, her two brothers came through the clearing, and they saw the Chenoo, and she called out to her brothers, "Come, brothers, we have a special guest. Will you not greet your grandfather?" And the brothers were frightened. Their tongues were cleaved to the roof of their mouth, but their sister was a wise woman. And so they said, "Grandfather, you are most welcome. It looks like you have traveled for a long ways." And so the brothers who were carrying the deer said, "Eat, grandfather. You look like you are very hungry. Eat and feast." And the Chenoo took the deer and just ripped apart into pieces until at last there's nothing but a chunk of meat and flesh to be eaten. And then the Chenoo sat there and stopped, for there's nothing more to eat. And then the Chenoo began to speak in a voice that sounded almost human. It said, "You must do exactly what I tell you. And if you do not do exactly what I tell you, all will be lost. Make me a sweat lodge. Make me a sweat lodge and heat rocks, many rocks." And so the sister and the brothers went, and they went to nearby stream, and they brought in rocks, and then they made a sweat lodge, and they threw the bark over it to make a sweat lodge. And the Chenoo, when they were done, went into the sweat lodge, said, "Bring fire, heat rocks." And they heated rocks in the fire, and they put the rocks into the sweat lodge. And the Chenoo took the rocks, and they said, "Bring water." And they brought water, and he poured it onto the red hot rocks, and with a hiss, a steam, the sweat lodge began to get hotter and hotter and hotter. And last, it was so hot, but still the Chenoo cried out, "More rocks, more water." And the steam filled the air, the hissing filled the clearing, until at last there was silence. And the brother and the sister waited to see what would happen next. And out of the lodge there came a thin, wizened, scrawny man, so thin it seemed like he was nothing but a pile of sticks bundled together. And through eyes that had not seen the light of day and human beings for such a long time, it blinked in the sunlight. It blinked and it blinked until at last it was able to open its eyes, and he saw the two brothers and the sister. And he stopped for a moment, and he said, "Wait." And he began to cough, and he began to cough, and he coughed until it seemed like the coughing would rip that thin frame into two. And then it coughed up a thin shard of shining spear, like it was ice. It was the heart of the Chenoo, the true heart of the Chenoo, that kept it imprisoned in its form. And this sliver of ice came And the Shanu said, "Take it and throw it into the fire. Throw it in the fire as quickly as you can, or I will devour you." And they took the sliver of ice and they threw it onto the fire, and with a hiss, the ice was melted. The fire was out, but now the Shanu was free of its curse. And so, with no more food, no more things to give to the Shanu, the young woman and the two young men and the old man made their way through the forest to once again to join the people it had lost so many years ago. And that's the story of the Shanu.
Oh, I love that. I read a version similar years ago, and I just loved that story, this kind of rehabilitation. And there was like, and I think the version I read, there was kind of a fight at the end, and maybe it was her husband rather than brothers. But it's just beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's one of my favorite stories because it's in elsewhere in Canada is known as the Wendigo.
Oh yes, yeah.
And here in Toronto, I don't know if they understood whether or not the joke, but they kind of cleaned up a creek in Hyde Park. They decided to give it a name.
Yeah.
And the Anishinaabe person, I don't know his name, but he gave the creek the name of the Wendigo.
Nice.
So there's a
Oh,
big joke flowing through the center of Hyde Park in Toronto. Okay.
So someone will tell him one day.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Norman. All right. Keith, Lincolnshire Day Tales. Let me spotlight you, and then you can unspotlight yourself. There we go.
Gallery. Well, hello everybody. Yes, it's Lincolnshire Day, and I've got a Lincolnshire tale.
Yay.
And it's about a farmer that lived in Lincolnshire Wolds, rolling hills, the mid of Lincolnshire, many years ago. And he had a wife and he had a young boy. His young lad was a baby called Dick. And it was Christmas Eve. And he was sitting beside the fire, warming himself, dozing a little bit, lit his pipe and he little smoke. And he was thinking about the year and how things had gone on the farm. He was thinking about how they were letting in foreigners' wheat, and so how was British farmers going to be able to survive because of all this foreign wheat coming in. And he was just sort of musing things and thinking about that. And he thought about the money they'd made through the war as well. And he got up from beside the fire. He just went to the door and opened the door, and he looked out, and it was getting dark, and it was all the valley there was covered with snow. But there was a beck, there was a stream that ran through there, and he could see this black water running down there like a black snake through the snow. And then there was a drip on the back of his neck. The snow had been melting, and he shook himself. And he turned in again and went down beside the fire. And he slept there. Well, he slept, he was dozing. And he had a dream. And he dreamt that the squire, the landlord, come in and said, can you pay me the rent tonight? Your rent tonight? He said, no. And the squire said, well, out tonight. And was going. He said, well, I can't be going out. You can't throw me out at Christmas Eve. But then he dozed again, and he was sitting there, and he felt a tug on his sleeve. And he looked down, and it was his dog, Old Rover. Or as he would say, Old Roar. Old Roar. The dog was tugging his sleeve. He said, and he kicked the dog, and the dog went up the stairs into the bedroom of little Dick, his child. Now, the wife had said he must bring the child out with his cradle to look after him, but he clearly forgot about it. And so the dog was going up the stairs, and he heard this click, and he remembered that the door of the baby's room didn't latch properly. And he dozed again in beside the fire, and then suddenly there's this big tug on his sleeve again. And he lashed out with his foot, and he kicked his wife. And she said, "What are you doing there? This house is afire." I don't know what to do. The stairs is alight. We must save little Dick upstairs. But he couldn't get upstairs, so they went outside, and they found a ladder just beside the barn wall. And they propped up against the window of the baby's chamber, the baby's room. And he smashed the window in, and the smoke came out into his eyes. And then he heard the child crying, and the dog was barking. And he cried out, "Rover, Rover, Rover, roar, roar, roar." And through the smoke came that dog carrying the baby in his mouth, brought it to the window. And so the farmer was able to take his child, Dick, down and gave him to his mother. They said, "Oh, I must go back and say the dog." "Go back up there." She said, "Yes, I'll go back up there." And he climbed up the window, up the ladder again to the window, and he got hold of the dog, old Rover, and some of the hair came off in his hands, but it smelled like it singed, but he brought the dog down. And so the father and his wife, his little child, and the dog, they went to the barn. And it wasn't likely to burn because it was the wind was in the opposite direction, so it wasn't likely to burn. And they wrapped themselves up as best they could, but it was really cold. And then when the roof of the house fell in, there's a big crash. And the rest of the village, they heard this, they saw the fire and the rest of this, and they rushed up, but it was too late. And the farmer's wife, she got soaked in the thaw, and she died that night. But the farmer was able to look after his son. And then he told the story of what happened 10 years ago, about all that had happened that night when the little baby was saved by the dog. Now that's a very brief summary of a story told by Alfred Lord Tennyson, who was born and lived in Somersby, about 4 or 5 miles away from where I live. And Alfred's father was the vicar there, and behind me you can see actually the church where he ministered. Now, as you know, Alfred Lord Tennyson became a very famous poet, and he lived in different parts of the country. And many years after living in Lincolnshire as a child, he wrote some poems in Lincolnshire dialect. And the story I've briefly told you is a poem, it's based on a poem called Ode Ruer by Alfred Lord Tennyson. And when there's time, I will share that story with you, that poem with you. But I warned you, it's in Lincolnshire dialect. And many of you will feel it's a foreign language. But when there's opportunity, I will share the poem of Alfred Lord Tennyson, Ode Ruer.
Oh, thank you. A fabulous celebration of Lincolnshire Day. Thank you, Steve. That was awesome. Love it. I want to hear the poem now. Like, we get time at the end. Awesome. All right. Baden, are you there, and how are you feeling? Are you feeling up to sharing
Well,
something or not? It's fine
I
if you're not.
mean, you know, it's as if the gods decreed that Keith would finish by talking about a poem and that
Uh-huh.
I'm going to read a poem. Well, no, I'm not going to read a poem. I'm going to perform a poem for
Fabulous.
the assembled company. This is a very personal experience and a real experience that can you all see me?
Yeah, just about. You keep
Yes.
kind of diving in and out.
Good, good. Because I want to remain in darkness for tonight. So this is a real experience that I went through and want to share with you. I don't know why, but it's a poem that has been coming back to me more and more often recently. And I thought I was going to do it tonight. Wasn't sure about it, but Keith has set me up gloriously
Mhm.
by talking about a forthcoming poem. It's called A Moment in Nature. And I'm not going to say anything about it because it ought to explain itself. A moment in nature. Nobody walks in rain where I come from. When it thunders down, drumming on galvanized iron roofs, cascading from overhanging awnings, people pause. They huddle in doorways and on strangers' galleries, taking shelter where they can. My father told me about men who lost their jobs back in the early days in this country, sacked by cynical foremen, incensed, incredulous, asking, "What do you mean you stayed home because it was raining? This is England. It rain every fucking day." Well, you know what? You can stay home from now on. So that night, watching as the deluge flooded our road, as shards of light sparkled like broken glass, rebounding off parked cars, and streaks of lightning rent the sky, I leapt up from the sofa, intoxicated by a sense of power arising from within me, inextricably connected to the forces of nature raging without. Stripped to the waist, I went through the front door, nostrils flared, inhaling ozone-rich air, and sprinted the length of the street. I returned dripping wet, shivering from adrenaline-fueled ecstasy, to find my partner aghast, distraught. "Are you mad?" she screamed. "You could have died." I demurred. Yes, but thank God I'm alive.
Thank you, Baden. That was beautiful. Could feel the rain. Yeah. I love it. So atmospheric. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Okay, next on my list, I just keep getting lost in every story and poem. Next on my list is Evita. Evita, are you ready to share?
I am. I couldn't get in on the tablet, so I'm on a very small phone
Okay.
because I refuse to get a new one, but I'll do my very best. And
Hang on.
David, it's just a way of stories. I think that birds feature in my story as well, and I actually chose to premiere this story tonight,
Yeah.
and it just fits. So it's one of my own stories. People sometimes ask me, Evita, where do you find those stories? Well, all of us here, the initiated, we know that stories might be behind this door at Marrakesh. It might be growing out of the ground. It might be hanging in a tree or flying or hiding behind a tree. Who knows? But stories come, and every now and then they grab your heart, or they sit on your shoulder and whisper, "Tell me, tell me." I'm sure it's happened to you as well. And for me, this story, which often happens in poetry and stories, is something I witnessed this time around. And it sat with me. And before I tell the story, I would like to say that this is in no way a reflection of the beautiful people of the land where I witnessed an incident, because the people are actually beautiful. It could be anywhere. The story comes with a slight trigger warning to my sisters and a strong reminder to my brothers here to always, always speak up when you see the wrong thing is happening. So, are you ready to come with me? Far away to Papua New Guinea. Did you ever wonder why, when you walk in forests, sometimes they are dead quiet? There's nothing. No bird is singing. And it even seems that the leaves don't rustle there. I can tell you why that happens. Dibaye, dibayo, kuraki de nake ibutue, te kukura kuna ibutue, dibaye, dibayo, murai dikade iyo. The silent forest, far, far away from here, up in the highlands. There was a warrior, a strong warrior. His skin gleamed, his muscles rippled, his aim always true. He was a great protector and provider for his clan. Now that very warrior was on his way home from a hunt when he heard a beautiful sound. Surely, he thought to himself, this must be a strange bird indeed. And he stood very still as a tree, and only his eyes moved. First he scanned the sky, the canopy, the trees around him, and then the ground. Further away, he saw it, a clear waterhole, and next to it, not a bird, but a beautiful, tall, young woman. Her voice, her song was weaving a magic web. And do you know something? There were all kinds of birds that seemed to be singing back to her. Was she talking to them? Now the warrior's heart did a crazy dance. You know the kind of dance that your heart can do? Ah, she was exquisite. She was graceful. And he knew, she has to be mine. So he stayed there, so very still. He sat down and he watched. And he listened. After a while, she picked up her bilum, her basket, and began to walk home. He followed at a distance, and suddenly, poof, they came to a village, and she had disappeared. He asked some old people, "Hey, where did this dream of a woman, where did she go? Where did she disappear to?" Well, the boo-boos, the old women, they just chuckled. The old men nodded. "She be kicking I. the chief's daughter. So the warrior went in that direction and found the chief's hut. He still had his prey with him, and he had a shell necklace. He took it off, and together with the pig, the little freshling, he put it in front of the chief and said, "Oh, may I ask for your daughter as my bride?" The chief scratched his beard. Kekenai. She's a strong one. You're going to have to ask her yourself. But I doubt she would leave her clan or the birds. They are her kin, you know. Merrow, such was his name, promised he would be back for Kekenai. And immediately he went for a great big hunt and a search. Oh, and Merrow did come back. He was dressed in all his finery, his most beautiful headdress, and necklace upon necklace of beads and shells. And he came back to the village, and everyone gathered. And Merrow, the beautiful warrior, he danced his story. He jumped, he stomped, he twirled, he moved. Kekenai watched him move. And oh, that smile. Don't we know it? When Merrow had finished his dance, his story, the chief said, "What say you, Kekenai? Will you go?" Kekenai looked at her father and looked at Merrow. If he promises to be kind and to never hurt any birds, I will go. Oh, my friends, the ceremonies, the dancing, the feasting, it lasted for days. There they were, Kekenai and Merrow, beautiful together. And she left with him, back to his tribe, where they moved into a small hut on top of a beautiful green hill. A hut always filled with love, laughter, and food. One morning, Merrow bid farewell to Kekenai. He had heard that down the valley there were some traders that had arrived, traders with strange light skin and hairy faces. But those traders, they would give you things if you brought them the shells and some meat. So Merrow left. Merrow met the white traders. He came back late, his eyes cloudy, his gait unsteady. "Kekenai!" he called out. She smiled when she saw him come. She was standing next to her favorite tree, talking to the birds. "Kekenai!" he roared. "Come!" Kekenai put up her hands and said, "I'll be here soon, just let me finish." This so vexed him that Merrow went up. His face was distorted, and he struck her. Kekenai fell to the floor. All the birds stopped singing. There was an eerie whistle and a crack. And instead of tears, out of Kekenai's eyes floated two small white feathers. Now, Kekenai still sang, but the songs began to sound a bit different. Kekenai would still smile, but not as much. One morning, Merrow went out hunting. But alas, his arrow missed the prey. This frustrated him so much that he went straight to the traders to spend the day with them. When he came home, his eyes were cloudy, his gait unsteady. He came inside the hut. Kicking I need you now. Kicking I patiently put up her hands. Merrow, you look tired. Come, rest. But Merrow did not listen. He grabbed her and he took her. Again, he did not hear the crack. He did not notice the birds stopped singing. The next morning he awoke with a terrible headache and he decided to go for a big wild boar. Out he went, our great warrior, with his favorite spear. And he listened and he looked and he saw a great big boar. He raised his spear. He was ready. He let go of the spear and the spear flew. But so did hundreds of birds. They whistled and screeched. It startled the boar that rushed off into the undergrowth. And that arrow, it flew and flew true, hit a rock and it broke. Imagine, my friends, Merrow's spear he never missed with. His most prized possession was in his hands, broken. And then a bird laughed. Ooh, 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 ah, ah. So angry, so enraged was Merrow that he stormed home, and there under that tree was Merrow. She saw him, she waved. But ooh, who was that man? His face was all different. And Merrow raised his fist. This time, when he hit her, he heard the crack. He heard the whistle of hope leaving. But Kekenai spread her long, graceful arms and flew away. In her place was just a pile of bloodied feathers. The forest in that part was silent. It is to this day. And Merrow, the great warrior, fell to his knees, realizing his Kekenai, his love, had flown away.
Thank you. Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you, Evita. Oh, I'm like, such good stories today. I don't know if anyone else had technical issues then. I was trying to spotlight Evita and it kept going to Baden instead. That my screen seems to be stuck on speaker. Could you all see Evita? No. So some people could, some people couldn't. We're not quite sure what's going on. I could see you in the corner, just not big. So Zoom has for some reason decided that Baden is the speaker from now on.
Now we collaborate a lot, Baden and I, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. We could hear you and we could see you, Minnie. We'll try and fix that for the next one. Okay. Next up, Roisin. I'm going to see if it'll let me spotlight you. Let me just see. Or if it's just going to, hang on, let me see, replace. Yes, apparently you're allowed. There you go.
Connections. Evita talked about those stories that grab your heart. And about 18 years ago, when I was a director of the UK Society for Storytelling, we were gathering at the home of our then secretary, Tina Bilby, the dear departed Tina, and one or two drinks may have been taken and stories may have been told. And she told a story that went into my head and my heart. And I just loved it. And the next time I saw Tina, I said, Tina, I loved your story. And she went, Tina was a librarian, and she went to her private library and she opened the Blue Book of Stories and she read it and she slammed it shut and went, the way I tell it's nothing like it is in the book. You can read this version or you can keep my version. And I said, I don't want to read it because the one that went into my heart was the version you tell. So the reason that I'm telling you this is today I was on a workshop about writing a management plan for public open spaces for wildlife. You know, lovely subject. And there was a chap there who was actually a horticulturalist by trade. And he said, do you know, I was talking to some people who said you can make cloth out of nettles. And I've never known that. And this whole story jumped back into my heart and my head. And what a better place for it to come out but tonight. So I am going to tell you the story of the weaver's granddaughter as the late Tina Bilby told it to me. Long ago, in the days in England, when if the lord of the manor owned the land, he also owned the people who lived on the land. You were tied to your lord. You were obliged to your lord. You weren't, it was like a kind of slavery. And the weaver lived in a village on land that was owned by the High Lord. Now, this weaver, she was very talented. She took the material, she spun it into thread, she wove, and she was so talented that people said that maybe she wove a little magic into every single cloth that she made. But she specialized, as many people did. She only made 3 things. She made blankets for newborn babies. And they said any baby wrapped in one of her blankets slept sweetly and grew up to be a kind and generous and gentle human being. She made wedding shifts for brides, and they said any bride that wore the wedding shift under her gown had a sweet first married night, loved her man and he loved her back, and they were blessed with many babies that went on to be wrapped in her blankets. She made shrouds for those who were leaving this world. And they said that there was something in her shrouds that when the dying person was wrapped in the shroud, before they sewed it round the body, the soul was already at the gates of heaven being let in. Now, the weaver, she had a daughter, and as was the way in those times, the daughter left home. She went to work in the city. She got a trade, she married, she settled down. She didn't want to be owned by the lord of the manor. And she had a daughter. But there came a time when the daughter was growing older. The weaver was growing older too. And the daughter saw her aging mother. She saw her daughter exposed to the dangers of city living. And she put 2 and 2 together and said, my daughter, go and live with your grandmother. Look after her in her later years. Learn the skills that she has. And so the granddaughter went and lived with her grandmother. And so she learned how to pick the plants, treat the cloth, the fabric, the fibers, spin them into the thread, and then weave. And it was a typical little house. It was a room upstairs where they slept, and downstairs was the loom. And in the morning, they would sit at the doorstep with the beautiful sun coming down, and they would spin with the spinning wheel. In the afternoon, when the sun was at the back of the house, they would go in and they would weave on the loom. And you could hear the click and the clack as they weave the fabric. So every morning, the girl would be out spinning. Well, it wasn't long before the lord of the manor, he came past on his fine palfrey. And he saw a fresh young girl. And she caught his eye. And he was not too minded about where she came from, but he knew where he wanted her to go. And he said, my girl, I see you are spinning. My wife, the lady, could do with some help. Do come up to the manor house and we will employ you to help my lady in her spinning. Now, whether the girl was worldly wise enough to know what he had in mind, or whether she was just a bit contrary, who knows? But she said, my lord, thank you for your offer, but I'm here to look after my grandmother. And I decline your kind offer, and I will stay here. Well, of course, she wasn't born there, so he couldn't command her. and he couldn't do anything. And so he turned his horse about and went off. But with the pride of the sort of man that is not used to being told no, he wasn't likely to forget. Anyway, time went on. The girl spent her mornings weaving, her afternoon morning spinning, the afternoon weaving. And so it went on for a while. But every day on the road past the cottage would come a young man. He was a woodcutter. He was born in the village. He was part of that whole community, and he went and cut wood like his father and his grandfather before him. And at first, when he saw the girl, they'd kind of look at each other shyly and look away. And eventually they'd sort of smile a bit. And eventually, after quite a while, there'd be a little, and it wasn't that long after that that they would start to talk, and talk came to sharing jokes and smiles. And eventually they decided they wanted to get married. Now, the tradition was that anyone in the village who wanted to get married was present themselves at the Lord's high table to ask permission. It was kind of just a tradition, and you'd go up and say, "My Lord, may we get married?" And he'd go, "Oh, yes, of course you can. You know, do invite me to the wedding," and everybody would be happy. And so the young woman and the young man, with the blessing of both their families, went to the Lord, and they stood hand in hand and said, "My Lord, we would like to get married." Well, the Lord recognized her and he said, "No." Nobody had ever heard of him saying no before. His wife, who was not stupid, said, "Darling, why don't these two to get married?" Because too young, darling. They're too young. They you know, they need more experience. She said, "Well, that's odd. So what are you going to do about it?" And he said, "Well, I could always set a challenge, because that's the way that people did it in the old days." And he looked at the girl, and in spite, he said, "I want you to make me something. I've heard you and your grandmother are very skilled. I want you to make me something, but I don't want it out of flax, and I don't want it out of linen. You can make me something out of stinging nettles." The girl was horrified. What would she make out of stinging nettles? How could she gather stinging nettles? She didn't know. She rushed back to her grandmother in tears. "Granny, Granny, Granny, do you know what's happened?" But instead of grandmother comforting her, Granny laughed in her face. "Granny, that's awful. Why are you being so cruel?" She went, "Darling girl, he may be the lord of the manor, but he's got no idea about weaving and spinning, has he? Come, I'll show you." And so the grandmother led her granddaughter out, showed her how to carefully pick the plants of the nettle, to strip off the leaves, to soak the stems until they were soft, to beat them soft, to then draw them out and then spin them into the most beautiful fine thread, finer than the finest linen, finer than flax, finer than hemp. And then once you got a ball of wool, you could start to weave it. And the girl started to weave. The lord of the manor said, "So what are you going to make for me, my girl?" And she, in her defiance, said, "Well, my lord, with due respect, you and your wife are of a certain age. I don't think you want a baby blanket. And your wife and you are already married, so she doesn't need a wedding slip. And the only thing I can make for you is your shroud, and that is what I'm going to do." And that's what she started weaving every afternoon. Everybody in the village heard the shuttle going to and fro. Everybody in the village whispered about the fact she was making the shroud. Everybody in the village whispered about this family had a certain magic that you shouldn't really upset. And it wasn't long before, as that piece of fabric grew, the lord in his fine castle started to feel quite unwell, and then quite ill. And then he took to his bed and he began to fade. And he called his sergeant and he said, "Sergeant, go to that village. Tell that girl to stop weaving now." And the sergeant went down and he kicked open the door and he went, "Oi, you, stop it." And she went, "A bargain is a bargain, and I will carry on until I've finished. Good day." Well, the sergeant had never been talked back to. He didn't really know what to do. So he went back and said, "My lord, she's not stopping." He said, "Sergeant, go tomorrow. with your axe and break the loom. So the next day, the sergeant came with his great war axe and he went into the cottage and he hacked at the wooden loom. Now, was there magic in that loom, or was he just not very good at chopping wood? Who knows? Because the next morning, as the sun went round to the back of the house, the villagers could hear kshuk, kshuk, kshuk. And the weaving continued. And the sergeant went back, shamefaced, and said, "My lord, I did what I could." And the lord slumped on his pillows, grasping for breath. The lady of the manor looked at all this, and she was a sensible woman, and she went to the cottage and she knocked gently on the door and said, "May I please come in?" And the girl and her grandmother said, "Please do come in." And she said, "My dear, I know you love your woodcutter and I know you want to marry him. But I love my husband. I know he's an idiot and he's a pompous one at that, but I do love him, flawed as he is. And as a woman who is in love to a woman who is in love, I entreat you, will you please stop weaving that shroud?" And the girl was so moved, she said, "My lady, I concur." And she unhooked the piece of work, she folded it, and she put it away. Well, that night when the woodcutter came back on his way home and he opened the door and he said, "My love, why are you not weaving?" And she told the story. And he was a young man, he was impetuous, and he went, "If you love me, you'd never have stopped. How are we supposed to get married now? Do you think I'm going to wait for you on some whim of some posh people up in the hill? That's it, I'm off." And in his temper, he went out. He went down to the stream. He followed the stream down to the river. He followed the river down. "I'm going to go to sea. I'll show them all." And he didn't stop stomping until he saw the harbour with the great ships waiting to go. And he signed on to a sailing ship. And he didn't calm down until the ship was about 4 days out into the channel. And he'd signed on for the whole trip. And he sailed off, for the moment, away from the story. Meanwhile, back at the High Court of the Lord, well, do you know what? Even lords have bosses, and they're called the king. And the lord, who had recovered his spirits wonderfully, was having a great feast when there was a messenger at the door. "I bring message from your lord the king. The lord the king is going on a crusade to the Holy Land, and he wishes you to raise an army of at least 30 men and join him in his holy endeavours." And so the Lord had to obey, and off he went with his 30 men off to the Holy Land, where there was great battles. And in one of the battles, a spear hit him between the shoulder and his chest. And he fell on the battlefield, and his men scooped him up. But the wound, it festered. They took the arrow, they took the spear out, but the wound, it festered, and no matter what they put on it, the poultices and the potions, he got no better. And in the end, his men, they put him on a cart and they started the long, slow, painful journey back home. They put him on the ship. They took him off the ship. They took him back. My lady laid him in his bed. They stripped him off. They washed him down. So frail was he, couldn't stand clothing on him. He laid naked in his bed, his wounds suppurating day, followed day, followed day, followed day, as he sweated and groaned. And in the end, the lady could not stand it any more. She put on her cloak, she went to that little cottage in the wood, and she knocked. The door was open and she said, "May I come in, please?" And the granddaughter and her grandmother said, "Please come in." And she said, "My dear, I came to you once as a woman in love to a woman in love, and I said, please stop what you were making. I now implore you, please, please, if you have any compassion, make the rest of that shroud for my husband." And so the young woman, she took out that piece of weaving, she carefully put all the loops back on the loom, and again was heard kushuk, kushuk, kushuk. And when the piece of cloth was finished, and she took it off, and she cut it, and she wove it, and sewed it into the shroud, she sent for her ladyship, and her lady took it back, and it was slipped over the Lord. And as they slipped it over him, he finally breathed his last relieving breath, and he was free. And he was buried in the churchyard. And the lady was left to mourn, and the girl was left to look after her grandmother all on her own. And so life went on as life does, and she span in the morning and she weaved in the afternoon, until one day, one afternoon, when she was there at her loom, there was a shadow in the doorway, and she looked up, and there was quite a tall man, quite good looking and suntanned, and something slightly familiar about him. Not a boy, not a young woodcutter, but a man who'd been to sea, who rushed in and grabbed her in a bear-like hug and said, my love, I don't know how stupid I could have been. Isn't that what we'd all like to hear, ladies? And he said, oh, I was so stupid. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care how long it takes for the old boy to die. I will wait for you. And she sat him down and explained that they did not have to wait a day longer. So the next day, they went hand in hand to the church, past the tomb of his lordship, who had been long laid in the earth, and the guest of honour was her ladyship. And that day they got married, and there was a feast and a celebration, and they lived happily ever after.
Yay. Thank you so much. That was lovely.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I'd have forgiven him for sodding off to sea. God, stick your record, stick him a weaving.
Oh,
A better woman than I. Lovely. Oh, thank you. That was so great. Loved it. Thank you for sharing that. And also the nettle weaving. Someone I was on a nature walk recently with a ranger, and he'd done so much like nettle weaving and kind of making that all of his arms here were like he didn't get stung anymore. But everywhere else he did. So if he ever had shorts on or something, something, oh yeah, they do that. Whereas like his hands and everything work, which is amazing. You can get that
and
used to it.
recently, someone's actually produced a book called Weaving Nettles, and I think it's about grief and loss. And
Yeah.
I actually made it my business to find some fabric that had been made, and it's so soft and fine and pale green. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's so strong. I mean, even like we kind of know it for bushcraft, because you can make like really strong kind of like, you know, twine with it and everything. So yeah, but I've never had the courage to. I know there are ways of like taking it without it stinging you, but yeah.
Well, I cook with it, but I don't weave with it.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, nettle risotto, very nice with pearl barley.
Wow. That sounds like a foraging afternoon. Like, we have loads down the side of our garden. Let's get them. Although the hedgehog tends to pee in there, so maybe not. You know, I don't know like how hedgehog pee goes with nettles.
Risotto, to be fair.
Maybe it's a flavor. We have like about 10 minutes left. So has anyone like got an urge to tell something? Anyone desperate to share something they haven't?
I'd just like to share a quick bit about Tina. And
yes, please do.
she, one trip over, I had swore I wouldn't get any books. And that was the festival where Graham Bilba came with truckloads upon truckloads of books to sell because Tina had let go of her book. And I wish I could show it to you, but in every book that had been pasted a book plate of birds flying. And later that year, I was Catherine Sutar-Caddick. I came to her place for lunch. It was lovely. And she showed me the book plate that she had done, that book plate that she had designed. So there's a theme of birds and flight and memory.
Yeah, it is. It just feels like I was writing down these kind of themes, and there was lots of kind of transformation, wasn't there? And kind of lots of animal. I feel like we've had a very animalistic kind of like evening. Oh, well, it is probably all we have time for. So I'm just gonna, thank you so much. It's just been a delightful evening. It always is. So we had tiny bits of singing inside the stories. I will try and bring some music when I'm feeling better next time. So we're back the first Wednesday in November. How can it be like November? Let me just make sure I know the dates. The first Wednesday in November is the 5th of November, which is bonfire night here. So might tell some Guy Fawkes tales, who knows? But for the rest of this week, things I need to tell you. So Omar is doing Stories for Children on Friday, the 3rd of October. So that's this Friday, and that's 6 o'clock UK time. But also on Saturday at 10 o'clock, we have Young International Storytellers. Do you know what? John Rose just joined the waiting room, so he's probably about to do this bit. Should we let him in so we can like just do his last bit before we all go? No, John. Hang on, let's see if he's there. I don't know. So yeah, Saturday, 10 o'clock UK and Irish time is Young International Storytellers. John, I'm telling them what's on. Is there anything else you need to announce since you bothered to turn up for the last 10 minutes?
Well,
We can't hear you now.
no, hold on. Yeah, I've just got out of my van down near Portsmouth.
Okay.
So
Justine,
Yeah.
on the same day, on Saturday,
Yes.
David Heathfield, he announced that there's also a conference with Seth Townsend.
Okay. What time is
Yeah.
that? Do you know, Evita?
All day as a storytelling conference. If you go on David Heathfield's Storytelling Cafe Friends or whatever it's called, you will
Yeah.
see it.
Okay, and that's
it's,
something people can
like
access
they
online, yeah?
suggested them out. Yeah, and
But
it's
we
an
would
all-day
love- we
conference,
would love
and
all
I
the
think there's
children.
two things
Yeah.
happening, but that's also on Saturday. So
Also on Saturday. Lovely. Yes.
This is Young International Tellers, and we're relaunching it. It is a very important month.
Yes.
I mean, if Sam and James want to come along and do whatever they like, they
I'm not
would
sure
be
we can
more
count Sam
than
as a young youth
welcome.
anymore.
Well,
He's
no,
too
we
old.
used to put Alicia on. No, well, we
That's
put
true.
people on that were about to go to university last time, so they just become
We see Sam is now up at university, but I'll tell him about it anyway.
yeah. Well,
Lovely.
whatever.
Is
It'd be
the only
good.
other? So I've announced Omar for Friday. Are there any other announcements, John, that you want to share?
Well, no, I really want to have a push. If anyone's knows any young people anywhere, at 10
Grab them
o'clock,
off the
'cause-
street.
yeah, because it's always and I've put it at 10 o'clock in the morning so Australia and the Far East and India can participate.
Lovely.
So
I will share it around. Yeah.
so
see if we get anyone
it'd
there.
be really great to get this up and running.
Yeah, it'd be lovely to have it back. It was it's such a
yeah.
beautiful session. I really used to love it. So
I'll mention it to David, but he'll be concentrating on his conference.
yes, indeed.
Oh well.
Cool.
I nearly got in.
You nearly got in, and you missed some fabulous stories, so you have to watch it on repeat. And it's also you
Yeah,
have to say Happy Lincolnshire Day to
I
kids as
even
well.
brought a poetry book in with me.
Well, you know what? We got 5 minutes. If you can do a poem, should we let John finish off? Like since he's last in, let's let John do a poem, like a short one, because I know what you like.
No, right.
To finish off the night, John. Off you go.
Right, so here we go. Make love, not war or motorways. You can tell me it's about black and white till you're red in the face, and you can tell me it's about your race, but I can't stand the pace of misdirected hatred. Besides, I've a dread of misread history. You can tell me it's about Catholic and Protestant, Muslim and Jew, me and you, till you turn blue, but that doesn't make it true. There's not much left that hasn't been stolen. The stomach's getting swollen all over. Does not mean everyone we don't know is living in clover, and that's not to deny the cry of the dispossessed and oppressed. But if we wring our hands in despair, it doesn't matter how much we care. All we do is weep and leave others to drown in our sorrow. Hold hands, and we can circle the hills of Palestine and the villages of Kurdistan till governments and companies are not part of the scheme, and the obscene becomes obsolete. But for that, we need a new beat, one that does not come from the city, the brokers, the jokers that choke us with multinational greed and pollution. For them, there will be no absolution, for they are abstract. outside time and conceptually flawed, at odds with the simplicity of trees and the swords to plowshare philosophy that suits me, where we're all free to make love, to make love, to make love to whoever we want, wherever we want, whoever wants us.
What a beautiful way to end the night. Thank you so much, John. That was
Excellent,
great.
John.
Love.
Ah,
What a fabulous night. Thank you so much, everybody.
and I'm
We will-
so sorry I missed it. I shall get it on catch up.
You'll get it
Thank
on
you
catch
for
up. that's
thank
for
you
sure.
for running it, Justine. As
It's
always.
been immense fun, and thank you everybody for showing up. And hopefully, I will see you all again on the
I didn't-
5th of November.
5th of November. I didn't mean to be on the road. I thought I was going to be in Marrakesh today,
But you're
then
not.
I got an email from school saying, "Looking forward to seeing you on Thursday." And I thought, have I been booked?
Mhm.
Apparently, they booked me last October, and I hadn't put it in this year's diary, so I had to rearrange my. I'm now going to Morocco for a few days on Sunday.
Well, enjoy your school tomorrow.
Yeah.
Good night, guys. I will see you
Good night.
next
Thank you.
time.
Lovely
Bye,
to see you all
everybody.
again for a
The
second.
wings beneath my wind. Holding me up.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you later, guys.
Bye.
Safe journey.